Yo, what's good, man? This is East Been Child Podcast with your one and only host, Glory Boy, back here with another special episode for you guys. And like I always say, man, I'm gonna continue to bring amazing guests on this show, especially guests that's gonna help empower our community, especially what you see right now with the youth and all that. I mean, we have to speak about it. And these two amazing guests here today, we're gonna have an amazing conversation because they have went through some life experiences that a lot of you guys came and survived. But yeah, before we even go ahead and introduce them, y'all go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. And yeah, to our wonderful guests, how y'all doing today?
We're doing fantastic, man. It's just ironic that I get a chance to bring him along with me to the podcast because we have so many different things to cover. And Thomas Gant, for all y'all that don't know who he is, this is Thomas Gant. For community alternative. Say it again. Center for the Community Alternative and Changes comes from within. Also from what's the other one, man? There's so many. There's so many different organizations.
Good in the community.
It's so many different organizations that he's a part of. It's just ridiculous, man. I can't even think of everything. Community Not Cages. You know what I mean? He's a part of what I do with the Millennial Hydra, which is a reentry organization. He assists with Sylvia's house, who's under fire at the present time. Hopefully she'll come up out of that. But again, it's a pleasure to have him here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I mean, we actually had you last minute, and I was like, man, it would be an honor to have someone with also a similar story to you on the show. And also, if you could just tell the people your names, and then we can start this.
I'm Lamar Scott. Some know me as Jihad Siddiq, and this is Thomas Gant.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Gant. So I'm originally from Buffalo. I stay a little outside of Rochester now, but grew up in Central Park neighborhood here in Buffalo. So just fortunate and thankful to be here. Anything that somebody's doing that's positive, we can put a spotlight on things and also share information. Because I know, growing up, I didn't hear a lot of the positive things that I needed. So now I love being able to do that for others now. Yeah,
most definitely. I mean, and I appreciate you guys for actually coming through because I'm younger than you guys, but the amount of respect y'all have showed me, have actually made me feel like what I'm doing right now is impactful.
Yes, it is.
And I want to ask you, can you guys just take us back to when everything started for you guys, like where you grew up at, and how was your childhood like?
Okay, well, for me, my childhood was one filled with trauma and pain. I was born September 19th, 1972, and I was born, I weighed 1.5 pounds when I came out of the womb. I had a heart murmur, and I was addicted to drugs, which is the things that my mother consumed. My twin sister, she didn't make it. She weighed 3 pounds and a few ounces, but she consumed to death. So even though I was an infant, my spirit was still affected by that particular death. Even though I was an infant, I didn't even know that I existed. So that's how I came into the world. And at the age of 5, I had become an orphan. My mother and father both passed away that same year. My father had a massive heart attack in 1977 through the blizzard of 1977. And then my mother, she committed suicide, which is something that black people in this country specifically don't like to discuss because there's mental health issues. There's pain, there's sufferings, there's a lot of things going on in people's minds and their spirits and their hearts. And it's not discussed. So the easy way out, or the only way out for some people, is through suicide. I was sleeping with my mother at the time when that happened. And I always tell individuals how important it was for me to come up out of the sleep because she had me in a grip around my neck, hugging me, and I was choking. The only reason why I woke, 1, because of a law, 2, because there was no air going to my brain. So I was fighting that at the time. So being in foster homes and boys' homes and group homes, all of those things contributed to me being a physical warrior, and I didn't know that it was putting me in a position to be mentally strong at the same time. Coming from Buffalo, New York, going to Lincoln Hall, running away from Lincoln Hall, going to the Bronx for a small period of time, and then being rearrested and going to Spofford. So I'm there, the only Buffalo kid there, basically fighting for my manhood, for my spirits, and so on and so forth. So all the things that an individual can think of a child goes through with not having the family support that a child has to have in order to grow, I didn't have any of that. Only thing I had was me. So, it's a famous clip that 50 Cent always speaks about. He says, I couldn't run because I didn't have nowhere to run to. I didn't have anyone to run to or a home to run to at that time. So for me, I was literally homeless. People don't think about teenagers being homeless. When you don't have a place where you have mail coming to and your name is on the mailbox and you're living there, you're going from couch to couch, from grandmother to grandmother, you're homeless. You don't have a foundation. And that's where I came from. So eventually I ended up in the prison system for 28 and a half to 57 years, which means I do 12 and a half years. I do another 12 and a half years. I do 3.5 years. And then I go to a parole board and then they resentence you or let you go. These are the things that occurred with me in that situation. And within all of those times, every aspect of abuse that you can think of, I went through. I don't like to talk about the intricate details of it because it's unnecessary. But when you're a 5-year-old child and you're being abused in every way by an adult, it distorts your thinking to a certain extent because you're saying to yourself, why is this happening to me? And then there's also the aspect of, is this normal? Is this happening to my friends? Because it's continuing to happen. So you don't speak about it regularly as much as you should because it's happening everywhere you go. So, and as a child, you're discovering things.
And it's crazy because at a 5-year-old, some people may say, you're still young, how could you remember that?
No, I remember everything.
But at the end of the day, like when I heard this saying that from age 5 to 8 is what makes you who you become.
Your mind is like a sponge.
Exactly.
It's the developmental stages of who you're going to become.
Who you're going to become.
Right. This is why you see some children reading books like Power Thoughts and Think and Grow Rich and becoming stockbrokers at an early age. I seen a clip where there was a kid that was a stockbroker. He was 7 years old because his father taught him how to read the stocks. He was a genius. So this is the ages where you're going to become who you are. And I remember everything. So when I tell people that I remember every single thing that happened to me, every single human being, every adult that abused me, every person that gave me a hug, every person that said, I love you, you're great, which is very few, I remember all of that. So it fueled me. It fueled me when I was in the prison system. It fueled me to become better. It fueled me to know that I wasn't at fault for the life that I lived. I wasn't at fault for being in the positions that I was in. This is my journey. I always give the analogy as we're on a highway, a 5-lane highway. We're all trying to get to the same destination, but we're in different lanes, which means you're going to have different bumps in the roads. You'll have a lane that's just smooth with no issues. Then you'll have a lane with a lot of potholes. You'll have a lane where there's a slow car there. There's a lane where trucks and you're going to have fumes coming in through your car. So you got to fight the fumes. You got to fight the potholes. And you got to open up your eyes and make sure that the person in front of you is driving properly so you won't run into them.
It's like the winter time.
The winter
Buffalo,
time.
when everything kind of like went white out.
Everything white out.
White
so you
out.
have these
driving,
issues. We all go trying to get to the same destination. So for me, the primary amount of time that I spent in prison was in Attica, and this is where me and him was there together. He inspired me in a sense where I seen him going to college. I didn't go to college, but I read the books that they had.
Right.
Because I was trying to do something else. I'm thinking like everybody else that I'm gonna go to a law library and put a motion in or pay for this to be done, and I'm getting out of jail. This is what I'm literally thinking. Everybody thinks that when they go to prison that they're not gonna do 20 years. They thinking that they're going to find something new in the courts and they're going to put these motions in and the courts is going to respect what they're doing.
I mean, especially also coming from like a low-income family.
Oh, the majority of us.
That even make it harder because now with the lawyers,
90% of us.
You give up on paying the lawyers.
90% of us come from low-income families or poverty. Wow. That's in the prison system. And this is not just minorities, blacks. It's a lot of poor white people there also.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
even the correctional officers there, they're making a substantial amount of money, but they're married 2 or 3 times and they're paying alimony. So they're working to pay alimony. You know what I'm saying? They're working to pay alimony and to put some food on the table. So everybody that's in that department as workers, besides the superintendent or those that are in Albany, everybody is working from paycheck to paycheck. Everybody wants to go home in some form or fashion. Everybody see a door or a crack that they can get through to try to be successful in one way. So it's a dog-eat-dog world. Very rarely do you meet people that are truly, truly honest about their feelings, their thoughts, their emotions, and what they're trying to accomplish. It seems as though the majority of the people have an angle where they're coming, a negative angle, because angles is not bad.
Yeah,
Everybody has an angle, but it's
Right.
the positive angles that works. The negative angles you got to be aware of.
Yeah, they'll put you in a lot of different situations.
Yes.
And also your childhood as well. I want to hear a little bit more about it. How was it for you as well, like just growing up?
Yeah. And so my story is pretty much like majority of folks living in the inner city in Buffalo. Single parent household, just my mother, my 3 sisters. My mother busting her butt to take care of us. Didn't really see my father as much as I wanted. But growing up, and I highlight this because when I'm always talking to youth, I talk about the hurt and the brokenness that comes from not having both parents in your home. And so that was an issue for me. I covered it up, right? On the inside, I was tore up that my father wasn't in my life. Couldn't understand why he wasn't. On the outside, I had the biggest smile, like nothing was going on with that. And so that anger I kept, on the inside, carried it with me all the way into my adult years. But I'll say this, my mother still did everything she could to keep me on the straight and narrow. I was a Boy Scout. I played sports. She taught me the value of having dreams, had to be responsible, was in church. She whooped my butt when needed to be. I had to work summer youth job. So she did all the things, right? But at the end of the day, my mom still couldn't throw that spiral, right? She still couldn't throw that fastball. So I had this innate desire in me that I didn't know what it was, but I wanted that father in my life. So unfortunately, looking back now, I see that that's why I gravitated towards, I was looking for role models, right? People to fulfill that hole in me. And the role models I had around me in the inner city, as you can imagine, wasn't necessarily the right folks. They may have had good hearts, but some of their behaviors and things that they were doing was negative, right? And so I had self-esteem issues as a kid. Didn't really feel good or comfortable within myself. I was shy. I stuttered a lot. I had a heck of a speech impediment, right? I stuttered real bad. I mean, to the point where
You can't even tell, right?
listen, I stuttered so bad that I didn't even want to talk. And that's probably why I talk so much now. I'm trying to catch up for times not talking.
When did you stop stuttering?
I stopped stuttering literally as I got into my adult age. Once I started going to prison, and what helped me get over it was literally in prison, like my first year or two in prison. Ironically, I was watching a infomercial, and a guy came on there and said that people who stutter is things that are happening in their brain faster than what their tongue can actually articulate. So if you take your time, take a deep breath, words will come. So I said, let me try this.
Take a deep breath.
I took a deep breath and I said, oh, snap, words and stuff. And I'll say this, what also helped me get over my stuttering is self-esteem. I always talk about this because whether nobody never told me this or I never just did introspection myself, I didn't have value. I didn't feel valued, right? I didn't feel love. And I think that holds true for a lot of folks who make bad decisions. If you don't value yourself, you're going to put yourself in some bad situations, right? And so, but I was involved with a program in prison called Alternatives to Violence Project, AVP. And so they came in and they started talking about the need of self-esteem and how that helps you in conflict resolution. So I started learning all these things about who I was and me, and instead of what other folks had spoken to my life, right? So growing up in that inner city, just backing up a little bit, people gave me the nickname of Jay Bird. And so I had this nickname, and what I didn't realize back then was that people was giving me a nickname and they were speaking things into my life that necessarily who I wasn't, who I was designed to be. And I try to live up to that, right? And so in my childhood, not having my father, being angry, low self-esteem, I still had goals and dreams of wanting to play professional football or be an architect. So I got through high school, actually went to college. Went to Erie Community College in downtown Buffalo.
So you guys, sorry to cut you off, but you guys were in prison at like age 14, 15, 16?
No, I was in a child prison.
Okay.
At 14, 15. I was in a child prison. When my freshman year at high school, going to Grover Cleveland High School, I ran away from my adopted parents' home. and they put out a PENS petition, which is a parent's warrant. So they came and got me from high school and put me in the East Ferry Detention Center. And then from that point on, I went up to Lincoln Hall, and then when I ran away from Lincoln Hall, I was in the Bronx, and then I went to Spofford for a short period of time. But you know, for me, pardon me for cutting you off. For me, I may have had, up until I came home from prison, I may have had maybe 2 years in society where I knew that I wasn't in prison. Yeah, if that makes any sense to anybody listening, meaning that I didn't have handcuffs on me, I can go where I wanted to go, but I was still spiritually and mentally incarcerated because I had to go somewhere to sleep. I didn't have anywhere to sleep or anywhere to eat. So I was forced to be up under someone's household for a short period of time, whether it's 20 days, 30 days, or a month. So, and then I would go to church. I went to Prince of Peace Church of God in Christ. And Bishop Anderson was there, and Elder Core, Elder Jeffrey Horde. Those were spiritual big brothers for me, but they didn't know how to handle me because they didn't know what my issues were. You know, and then again, this is one of the things that when you have people in your life, just like he was speaking, when you have someone there that learns you and they know how important it is to speak greatness into you, to be able to pull out whatever great characteristics, traits you have, it creates a responsible young man, and then it creates a responsible adult. For me, I never had those things. You know, he had a mother. I never had a mother. I was going to people's houses. My man Jimmy, his mother, Aunt Pat, I had her for a short period of time. My music teacher, Joyce Robinson, I had her for a short period of time. You know, my adopted mother, I had her for a short period of time. And, you know, I didn't have anyone in my family, whether on my mother's side or my father's side, to grab me and speak life into me because they had their own issues that they were dealing with. So I always felt as though I was the black sheep and I was unwanted. You know what I'm saying? So I always felt that I never was valued in any of my family's life because nobody embraced me and said, hey, come on and live with me. Even when I came home from prison in 2021, my family didn't embrace me right away. My Aunt Ruth Mitchell told me I can come stay there until I'm able to find a house to live with and so on and so forth. And then my cousin Denise Mitchell allowed me to be paroled to her home, you know, and I was thankful for that. You know, I was paroled there, but I was paying her to live there at the same time. I was thankful for that. But at the same time, I'm in my 50s. I gotta grind and do it on my own. But imagine coming from being in a prison cell, you being dependent upon the system to a certain extent to assist you in doing some things, but you're independent. You have no support. I didn't receive visits like that. For the entire 3 decades that I was there, I received maybe 20 visits altogether. And that's great because there's people that never get visits. So those 20 visits, I remember each and every one of them. I'm thankful for individuals coming to the prison system and saying, hey, we're thinking about you for this moment enough to come up to this place to see you. And I'm thankful for that because most people don't even have it. Yeah, but again, for us to be here in the scenario that we're in, me as a care coordinator, behavioral health, I never thought that I would be in this position. I never thought me and him would be in a position where we're going to Albany and we're fighting to get laws changed and passed. You know, the Marvin Mayfield Act, you know, the Second Look Act, the Earn Time Act. These are laws that we're fighting to get placed in the New York State so that individuals will have another opportunity or better opportunities to either get out of prison or not go to prison. Yeah. Never thought that we would be in this stage. So these are just the things that we're going through in our life to be better people.
Yeah, and also just to ask you as well, at what age did you go to prison? Mm-hmm. And also I'm gonna get back to you. Mm-hmm. And what was the cause of you going to prison at such a young age?
Yeah, got you. Yep. So I ended up going to prison at the age of 21, and that was after. So I talked about single parent household. My mother still gave me a lot of opportunities. I actually was in college. My plan was to go to ECC for 2 years and then transfer over to Alfred State or UB to play football. So I dropped out of college at like 19 years old, and then I started selling drugs. And so I decided to sell drugs because in my community, that type of lifestyle was glorified, right? And I thought selling drugs was harmless. I thought it was innocent. The people in our community was kind of like celebrated for that. it wasn't looked on as a bad thing, right? In those communities, unfortunately, when I walked outside of my door, I was more likely to trip into trouble as opposed to opportunity. And so drug dealers, robbers, people who were in that lifestyle seemed to be prosperous. And I thought it was harmless. It looked easy. Let me do this. What I didn't realize is that in order to be a successful drug dealer, you got to take on all these different characteristics that's not like yourself. You got to, be violent, just live for the day, the best liar, manipulator, selfish, all these things. I justified myself in dropping out of college. My plan was to drop out of college, sell drugs, and then go back to college. I wanted to gain some money. I want to help take care of my mother and my sisters. Right. She's struggling, right? We were impacted by the huge driver of all folks who find themselves incarcerated is poverty, right? So it wasn't just about having wealth. It was about having the access to it or opportunities. Opportunities were very limited, growing up for us. And so that way seemed easy. So I started selling drugs. And then, long story short, some of my friends had got shot. Me trying to uphold that reputation and live up to the lifestyle of what a drug dealer is supposed to do, I went and took matters in my own hands and sought revenge, right? And shot the guys who was responsible for shooting them. Didn't necessarily intend on, the person dying. And trust me, that sounds foolish. Like, how do you pick up a gun, aim it at somebody, and don't think that death is gonna be a possibility? But I will say this, that my 21-year-old feeble mind did not calculate all the consequences that was gonna come behind that. I didn't think about him dying. I didn't think about what his family would go through and dealing with. I didn't think about the innocent neighbor who life was interrupted, right, from those gunshots that rang out. I didn't think about the EMT who was gonna come try to save, this young man and ultimately lose life. I didn't think about the police officers who had to come and see the blood and disarm. How about the judges, the police officers? And the ripple effect goes on, right? So did not calculate all of those consequences that was going to come from that. And so I found myself at 21 years old, standing in front of a judge, still didn't want to take accountability because in my mind, somebody did something to me, I had to go do something back to them. And so unfortunately, I was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life. At 21, I was given more years of incarceration than I had already on this earth. So I was shipped off to Attica in 1999, and that's when I started my incarceration that lasted 25 years. But ultimately, there's so many folks in our community who's faced with these same things. Lack of opportunity, poverty, and then not knowing how to address and deal with conflict and violence that a lot of us survive. So I'm not a survivor of domestic violence, but all that type of stuff was around me. I didn't necessarily have, sexual abuse or happened to me, but it was all still around me, right? And so this is what happens in our community, that our young folks are trying to navigate this, right? And then you mix drugs and alcohol in it, and then a whole bunch of bad decisions happen. And technically, we got science now that says a person's brain isn't even fully developed until the age of 25. So science now says that a person can't fully culpable or adequately add up what the consequences is to certain decisions that they make, right? And so this is why it's important to have some of those guardrails. I didn't get self-esteem. I didn't get respect. I didn't get a clear sense of spirituality until my adulthood. So this is why the work that we do also with mentoring young folks is to try to make sure they have some of those guardrails in their lives so they can kind of like navigate or make better decisions when they face with these obstacles, right? Which we all gonna face.
Yeah,
right? Peer pressure. Peer pressure is real. It don't stop just because you ain't 18 no more. Here I am, 49 years old. There's still peer pressure, right? 49? Whether it's indirect, I'm 49.
Damn.
So even if there's, wow, can we just pause for a minute? What was that? That sounded like, man, you old. Wow, brother. Thanks, man. Make me feel good, right? Appreciate that.
You had to get that little laugh in.
Wow, thanks, man. But I say all that to say, right? This is why it's so important. This is why we got to keep our households together, right? Men got to be taught how to be men. Women have to be taught how to be women. And I'll say this, that one of the things I had to get over when I have my father in my life, maybe somebody didn't teach him how to be a father. And maybe that's why he couldn't handle his responsibilities. And so I say all that to say there's a lot of folks who's living in our communities growing up with these same, consequences. And they just aren't being taught on what it means to be a part of these things. And this is why it's important to instill those guardrails, give those skills, experiences, and try to help folks feel better about themselves. Because if you feel good about you, you see value within yourself, it's a whole lot easier to see value in someone else, right? And even in your community.
And I want to ask you also, because I mean, we had a little conversation last time I saw you at that event, and we didn't get in depth on the reason why you actually also went to jail. What was your reason?
Two things: ignorance of youth, and not knowing how to, take responsibility. The charges were there was an 11-count indictment. For those that don't know what an indictment is, you get arrested, and all of the charges that you were arrested, plus the ones that they tack on to it. I was convicted of all 11. So it was 2 counts of attempted murder, 3 counts of assault, first-degree assault, 2 counts of possession of a weapon, and the list goes on. So attempted murder, I went to prison for attempted murder, possession of a weapon, and assault. Along with being in the wrong places, always at the wrong time, because once again, when you're in these neighborhoods in which we grew up in, the black neighborhoods, you're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time if you're in the streets. It's highly impossible for you not to be. So many innocent people either that caught stray bullets or ended up going to prison for something that they didn't do because it was just hanging out. For me, I wasn't at the wrong place at the wrong time on my own accord. I had no other choices. If you're going to eat, you're going to eat one way or another. I could have went and got a job, work at McDonald's and eat McDonald's food, but how cool was that? You know what I mean? How cool was that when I'm seeing everybody driving in their Jeeps and their Wranglers and the Cherokees and the jewelry and the clothing and things of that nature that we looked at as being prosperous in our communities. We seen that. The only prosperous people we see that's prosperous are the drug dealers, the hustlers, the pimps, and then there's the rent collector or the preachers. Those are the successful ones. So as a 17, 18-year-old kid that have no type of foundation, you're going to go with what you see. Right. It's like seeing a plate of food. Oh man, that looks good. I'm going to eat it. But it could be poisonous. But you're hungry and it looks good. So you're going to eat it. Forget the consequences. It's the same thing in the streets. So I went to prison for attempted murder, first-degree robbery, and a host of other charges. And I never thought that I would say that prison was the best thing that ever happened, but it was the best thing that ever happened because I knew that once I became an adult within a prison setting, if I wouldn't have been there to have the time that I had to sit down and think, to read, Think and Grow Rich, you know what I'm saying? If I didn't have that time to do that, then I would have ended up dead or in the federal penitentiary with 900 years.
Yeah, a lot of people actually that I've had a few people on the podcast that have been to prison for like 20 years, 15 years, and they always say the same exact thing.
Yes.
Like prison was one of the they would say like prison was one of the best thing that ever happened to me because it saved my life.
Well, it saves your life because, we have time in an 8x10 cell to think. We have time to think and evaluate our lives. We have time to sit there and say, you know what? I'm going to go get a GED or I'm not going to get a GED. I'm going to go to aggressive replacement training or I'm going to go to Alcoholics Anonymous or I'm going to go to the yard and work out.
So everything is all in
Everything
one place.
is clear and concise. You have the opportunity to think, make plans, and know exactly what you want to do with your life while you're in prison because all you have is time. All you have is time. Everybody's got books. Everybody's reading. Whatever it is that everybody is doing, you're going to do one or two of those things. You're going to either work out, go to college. You're going to get your business degree, or you're going to get a culinary arts. You're going to go work in the tailor shops, the metal shops, whatever it is. You're going to do something. Some of us take it even further and start planning for the future, not knowing what the future holds for us. But we become a part of these programs. People say the programs in the prison don't work. No, the programs itself doesn't work. You have to work the program. You know what I'm saying?
It's just like outside.
It's just like outside. If I'm going to an aggressive replacement training, that means I'm learning what my triggers are that causes me to be angry. The average person don't know what their triggers are that causes them to be angry. Now I know what my triggers are, and I feel it and I see it. I'm going to take myself away from those situations because I know what can happen if I become angry. I'm going to be in the most trouble, not the person that may be hurt. Because not only the person that may be hurt, they're going to be hurt, but I'm going to catch more time. I'm never going to come home. And then I'm going to be subjected to that individual's family and friends that want to hurt me within the prison system.
But if I could also add, though, so Jihad and a lot of hosts of other guys who we did time with, these guys really applied themselves, right? Against hope. Like, we had, like, garnered hope against hope. When you tell a 21-year-old person you're going to be in prison for 25 years, most folks can just say give up. I've had friends who killed themselves, right? They couldn't stand that. I've also had friends get involved with drugs, get involved with gangs, and still not take steps forward and end up coming home with scars on their face or killing somebody else in prison, right? Continuing that cycle. So I say that to say these are special people who can take it upon themselves to say, I'm going to do something different. I want a different life for me. Even though 25 years is a long time, even though he did over 30 years, even though that's a long time, I'm going to still do something different. That doesn't happen for everybody. And I'm going to straight be honest with you, because prisons literally are harming folks. Department of Corrections that we spend $3 billion for a year is not doing its job. So although you see great representation, Jihad, me, Twan, several of our friends and cousins who are out here doing great things, that's not the case for everybody, because the Department of Corrections is not doing their jobs by providing a safe environment where a person can flourish, right? And so more needs to be done with that. But I'll say this, that it takes a special person. I say it's a metaphysical answer. God, however you define it, is the reason why some of us took those steps forward to do great things, address our issues, right? And learn something. But that's not the case for most people. Most people lack hope, and when the worst thing you could ever do to a human is take away their hope. And that's what the Department of Corrections, that's what those environments breed right now, is hopelessness. So this is why prison environments is unsafe. This is why folks come home with mental health issues. This is why people come home and then recidivate. We just talked about a few minutes ago, several of our friends is right back locked up. And they did much as time as us, right? What's the difference? Well, you can look at their experience in prison and what they did and also what we did, and they was lacking certain things, right? They didn't address certain issues. They didn't get certain educational opportunities and things of that nature. So, not to, big him up, but think about this. While we was in college, he wasn't necessarily in college, but guess what? He was reading those books. When I go to college, let me get that book. Let me check this out.
Right.
He can tell you more about Kohlberg than the person who was actually in college. So I said it to say he took that step forward and applied himself. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. The majority of folks do not get that opportunity. This is why things need to be done now. This is why he talked about the advocacy work that we're doing now. More needs to be done, right? Because taxpayers, people in Buffalo, people all across New York State, is paying $3 billion a year, right? And we should be talking about how to reinvest that money to try to address folks before they go to prison, to address those adverse childhood experiences, right? That folks experience. But that's a whole nother story. But I wanted to put a pin in it, the fact that it takes an exemplary person to go into those environments, cesspool of evil, oppression, right? Harm, violence, and then still do something productive and come out better on our side. That does not happen for everybody. Unfortunately, I would love for people just to go to prison and get out and do the right, but prisons is not helping folks. It's the people that's applying themselves.
Let me say this too. Department of Corrections in New York State, right? You're around some of the most savage human beings that you can ever think of. I'm talking about individuals that have 17, 18 bodies.
Were you guys in like federal prison?
No, we were in state.
Oh, state.
We were in state prison. These individuals were serial killers. We were around serial killers from the neighborhoods, from the hoods that we from, for those that from Terrytown, Poughkeepsie, individuals that were very, very savage in their thinking. They smile and they laugh at you, but they're killers. We're around child molesters. Their whole lives, they're raping children. We're around rapists, individuals that were raping men and women. And this is just for us as inmates wearing green. We were around some of the biggest drug dealers in New York State that cared nothing about the dope and the drugs that they put in the neighborhoods. And then we're around the officers that knew nothing about black folks except for what they seen on TV and what they experienced white folks that knew nothing about black folks, that knew nothing about us but what they seen on TV and what they experienced in a prison setting. So just imagine going to a country where nobody knows anything about you except for what they read in the magazine is all negative, or they see in television is all negative, and then you have to be around them. Their whole thought processes about you is negative.
That's the same thing when I came to America. When I came to America, I started like 5th grade, 6th grade. And then while I was in school, is that a lot of students, what they were being fed was always that African kid begging for money. But where I'm from, it was never that. You know, we had a good life. You know, it was just that lack of opportunity compared to America.
Yes, it's the stigma.
Yeah,
It's the
so
stigma.
when I came here, you know, a lot of kids used to use the term African booty scratcher and stuff like that because of what they saw on TV.
Yeah,
and,
it's the ignorance.
and what you just said kind of
ignorance.
correlate to that, you know, the same point. And when they found out, okay, Africans are actually doing amazing, you know,
Yes.
they're
Yes.
actually hardworking people and this and that, they started understanding that, okay, the media really plays a part in,
Yes,
in
it
all of
does.
this.
Yes, a huge part.
Huge part.
This is why I always say that, you know, it takes over $100 and something thousand a year to house, clothe, feed, and give medical to an inmate. A year, over 100 something thousand. I think it's like 150 or something like that. So just imagine that 150,000 a year that they say that it takes to take care of an inmate. Imagine that person come out of prison and they're put in a place, a position of employment where they're simply making $60,000 a year. They start out making 60. Do you realize the recidivism rate would go down to 0? Reason being is because they're starting off making 60,000. The average person in Buffalo, New York don't make 60,000. They may make 35 to 40, if that. So if they say it takes over $150,000 to house, hold, clothe, and so on and so forth for an inmate, and a person come home and they have to go get a job where they're making 13,000. Some people say, man, you just left a prison system where you was making 13 cents. No, slave wages. Okay, I understand that. But the government is receiving this money to house me, to clothe me, to feed me, to give me medical and so on and so forth. Now I'm left to my own devices. I'm put in a position where I have to come home and learn life all over again and hopefully get a job where I'm able to sustain myself and then sustain a family. Some of us come out and become already made husbands. He came home and he was a husband.
Congrats to you,
Immediately. He was married while he was in prison. So he had to come right home and step right into husband mode, which means I am the head of the household. I am the breadwinner. You know what I'm saying? He came right into kingship. You know what I mean? Dog respected him. You know what I mean? Immediately. Dog looking right at me. Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yes, sir.
He did, too,
As soon as he come right in, the dog look, that's Thomas. You know what I mean? Dog respecting him. But my point is that a lot of us come home immediately to responsibilities. How are we going to come right home to immediate responsibilities and we're not even making $35,000 a year? That's it's insane. So you can't expect a person to come home from prison and say, you know what? You got to go to the Department of Social Services. You're going to get welfare. We're going to put you this. We're going to do this. We're going to do that and that. And then we can see if we can get you a job. So I came home to nothing once again, but I had a fortitude. I had a determination. And I had a championship mindset. I am a champion. Each and every day I'm a lion. I'm a champion.
And I respect that because a lot of people, like you guys said, a lot of people couldn't even handle that pressure. They got into jail and then
handle it.
some of them committed suicide. And
I try not to pat myself because there's so much that needs to be achieved. But there's times when I have to say, wow, bro, you know, you really stepped your game up.
And it's never too late.
And I do that. Because again, from childhood to adulthood was prison. I didn't know how to pay bills. I never learned how to drive a car. People laugh. I never drove a car. When I came home, got a car, taught myself how to drive, got my license, got a truck, got a job, got this and that. Those are accomplishments. Some people go their whole life and never achieve that. But because there's a determination, because I listened to David Goggins, who's from Buffalo. I listened to Eric Thomas. You know what I'm saying? I listen to these guys on a continuous basis. I listen to 50 Cent. I listen to these guys that are successful, and what they went through to be successful every single day is the same thing I went through. Mike Tyson and all of these guys. They failed, but they had to get up. And then I look at him. And then I look at a few other guys around the country that are successful that were in prison with us. And I'm like, wow, man, we really blowing. I'm glad he's doing good. Let me go over here and do so on and so forth. And then ultimately, I know that there are human beings coming home that need my help. There's a language that we speak, which is the language of, what can I do for you, man? I understand you can't read and write the way you're supposed to. Let's go over here and get you to the ABE, adult-based education. Let's get you over here with a job where you can work with your hands. Let's get you over here so you can have some transportation. You need housing. Let's make a couple phone calls and see what we can do for you. for your family and so on and so forth. Go to the Harvest House, get you some clothes, go over here to the pantry and get you some food to help you, transition from prison to society. Because it's hard, bro.
And that's the brotherhood that we need in our community. I want to ask you guys this question because you have been speaking to a lot of youth. But like, what message do you rely on the youth? Like when you're speaking to them, what message do you give them? Because nowadays, I mean, you could see a lot of kids, like you said, peer pressure. They see what they see online and they think that's cool. They see people, flashing guns or drinking lean and all those things, and they think that's the most amazing thing. I had a couple kids in my community that will actually do that, and I've always been positive. I've always surrounded myself around actually people who were older than me and doing better than me because I had to learn from them. And then those kids, when they do all those type of activities, I'm always like, yo, man, like, why are you doing that? Like, that's not right. And then the more they continue, I step away from them. But like, what message do you give to the youth
There's
nowadays?
a couple of things that I say. Specifically, I tell them to embrace who they are, because each and every one of us has a uniqueness within us. Love who you are. Be proud that you love opera, or that you love cowboy music, or you love to ride horses. Be proud of that, because there's nobody else around like you. You are unique in your entity. And I tell them that there's people in the world that you may be attracted to, some of the things that they do. Take some of the things that they do and incorporate it within your life, but be great at being you. Don't look at someone else and say, I want to be like that person, because that person is that person. And then I also tell them that peer pressure is extremely important.
Right.
It's important for you to recognize good peer pressure and negative peer pressure. The good peer pressure is you look to the right, some of your friends are going to school, they're playing sports, they're studying, they're going home at night, they're being a part of different programs in the neighborhoods, they're eating healthy, they're doing the good things to try to be better in their life. They're kids, but they still doing, they're going to be mischievous, but they're doing some good stuff. Then the bad peer pressure is the lean, the dope, the K2, the stealing of cars, the pistols, the guns, the violence, the sexual activities, the STDs, all of those things. And you've seen it on Facebook as an advertisement. Don't allow social media to destroy your spirit, destroy your mind, destroy your family, destroy everything that you should be striving hard to be.
Even the music that we listen to.
The music, everything. Social media within itself, if you listen to the negative connotation of it and you don't have anybody positive in your life, you're going to come to the negativity. This is why, we have here, this is a community health center where I work for, we have family planning services. And the family planning services specifically speaks about sexually transmitted diseases. It speaks about young girls with pregnancy, and it speaks about the responsibility that young men have for themselves and their families. So for me, I'll come in and be able to speak to a young man pertaining to how important it is to simply be responsible for who you are as a man. Family planning services. Exactly. And then there's the aspect of individuals, family members that don't know anything about a person coming home from prison. So I'll speak to them and let them know what to expect from a person coming from prison. Everybody wants their loved ones to do well. Everybody does. But then there's a prison thing that comes along with that. Don't pressure them so much. Give them the opportunity to find their ways. And then I speak to the inmates, former inmates. Right. So for me, I speak to them and try to give them the most positive affirmation as possible. And then it's the examples.
And
I would say, three things that I would always do. One, I would always tell youth, you're not on an island, right? Sometimes we think that whatever we do, however we move through life, it's only going to impact us. It's not true. My son most recently just made a bad decision, and his irresponsibility has now impacted not just me, not just his girl, his kids, my other family members. People was all stressed out up and down. I had to call him. I had to call all these other folks who now lives has been interrupted because of one bad decision he did. He's not on the island, and none of us is, right? Sometimes when we're young, we think that whatever we do only impacts us. So far from the truth. I gave an example earlier about the ripple effect. When you make a decision, there's ripples that come from that. There's good ripples, and then there's also bad ripples, right? And so we have to factor those in. And then secondly, I always say, the self-esteem, that is huge. Self-esteem helps you combat peer pressure. It helps you combat obstacles you may face. It helps build resilience in you, a lot of things. But here's what I find when I talk to a lot of youth and even adults. I always ask them first, tell me 10 good things about who you are. Most of them get stuck. After they tell me 2 or 3, the inverse is if I say, tell me bad things about you, they'll run that off real quick. This is what I don't like. This is, and so either they're not being taught right. You talked about it earlier with social media, how the media reflects and rejects on folks and project on people. But most folks can't tell you good things about themselves. We don't sit down and think about what's good about ourselves and then cultivate those things, right? So I always tell them, start with 10. Find 10 good things about who you are and name them. You want to be responsible. You want to be spiritual. You want to be a fan of it. And then when you get these characteristics, it gives you goals to strive to. This is what I need to work at. If I say I'm responsible, then I need to make sure my actions reflect it. If I say I'm a family man, I need to be. If I say I'm spiritual, if I say I'm kind or caring, I need to make sure that my behaviors is lining up. And that's what's going to help you stand towards peer pressure. And then lastly, I'll say, and you said it a minute ago, and so I would ask you, what has kept you on the right side? When you see people your age doing the wrong things, what causes you to go to the other way, right? And I say that because there's a lot of youth out here doing great things. Great things. Look at you. You put together this whole thing. That is great. That need to be celebrated. Your peers need to be saying, I need to get involved with what he's doing instead of, hating or not even paying attention, right? And so the answers to all of this, right, to youth, you have within yourself, because I don't know it all. My son tells me all the time, you don't know what it's like to, grow up in this type of age. And I said, you absolutely right. I had to, because, I remember my mother or elders talking to me when I was young, and I thought that you don't understand what I'm going. Look how you dress. Clothes is all tight, all, bell bottoms.
I was actually gonna mention that because nowadays, this generation, my generation also, it's a lot of the young guys, they have instilled themselves the feminine trait, and not just feminine trait in terms of like how they're dressing, but also how they act or react to certain things. They have lack of self-control. They overreact. They complain too much. Like you said, a lot of times we have to see other people's way of living. There's people who are struggling more than you. What makes you think like you're better than them?
Right.
That kind of helps you in that case to think about, okay, now if that person is living this kind of lifestyle and I have a shelter, I have, a house to sleep in, I have food to eat, why am I complaining?
Right.
Like I can make my life better.
Right. But he said it earlier. There's nothing new under the sun. So everything that you think that you can do right now, somebody has already did it and probably did it 10 times better. It may be different, right? We didn't have podcasts in the 80s, right? But the whole principle is still the same, right? It takes work, it takes responsibility, it takes imagination, it takes accountability, it takes responsibility. So although, things are different, they're still the same. And so this is what youth have to understand, is that person got to be an elder for a reason. You need to hear what they got to say. But in a flip, that elder also has to say, this youth knows something that I don't. This iPhone, when I came home in 2022, blew my mind.
You're confused.
And I'm still confused. I've been home almost 3 years this September. And my wife or my granddaughter, who's 11 years old, will take my phone. I say, hey, let me see your phone. She'll take it and do it. There I'm like, I still don't know how to do it, though.
Don't know how to do it.
You understand?
I still don't know how to do it.
Bro, I just learned the voice text. You know how you do the voice text? And you hit the audio? Yeah. I'm like, man, hold on, let me hit the audio. And once I hit the audio, I say, hey, good morning, so on and so forth. Just being silly.
It's that.
Yeah. That's all I do.
Yep.
People tell me now, yo, man, stop voice texting me.
Yeah. But look at this.
We can see it like Siri texted.
Yeah.
Look how that works.
Yeah.
It worked. That's how life is. It's tandem. This is why we have to respect our elders, right? And then the elders have to look and say, this you've got this strength and there's other things that I don't understand. We need to work together. And that's what community is about. And that socialization, that type of idea starts in the home. And so unfortunately, a lot of black and brown folks in the city of Buffalo and the inner cities throughout the state don't have that sense of community because their homes is broken. So they come from a place of brokenness and then they bring that same behaviors into society, right? Because that socialization ain't taking place in their homes.
Right.
And so unfortunately, this is why some of these things happen. But you said it earlier, it's never too late. And this is why once these youth start saying, and I start giving them examples of people who succeeding, because I'll tell you this, most folks have to see it in order to believe it. Blind faith is a beautiful thing, but most folks can't grab that. Their imaginations are limited, or whatever the case may be, right? They're dealing with trauma, they're dealing with harm. But if you can see it, you can believe. This is why I say our kids and our community needs to visit more than just a prison or a football field. We need to be taking them to doctor's offices. We need to be taking them to banking, home
places and stuff like that.
We need to see all these other different opportunities that there is, and see there's a black man or a black woman behind that camera.
That's right.
Putting this stuff together.
That's right.
Youth need to see the stuff that you're doing. They need to see more than what is going on and the brokenness and the trauma that they're in. So a lot of folks, once they can see it, they can believe it, right? And this is why these examples matter. He and I carry a huge responsibility. You carry the same responsibility too.
Yeah,
you carry a huge responsibility of being an example.
Yeah,
for folks, right? We have to show them that. And I laugh. I remember one time folks would tell me they're going to the club or as Jihad. Yeah, let's go check out this. He said, what they owe me there, I ain't got no time for no club. No folks don't care nothing about me. I said, you absolutely right. Let me hang out.
You know when a lot of people
me and him both said it because he came into town and he was just like, let's go check. I'm like, what are we going there for?
Yeah. When a lot of people come from jail, they go to club to, throw some money.
Yeah.
Especially I do see it like online.
It's a form of celebration.
Yeah.
Right. At first, I don't want to kick salt on it because this is part of our culture.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a form of celebration for them to say I'm free.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And it's one of them things where individuals be like, I want to go and let the world know that I'm back, that I'm back on top, or that I'm back here, or I want to be able to socialize immediately because I hadn't had the opportunity to socialize outside of the prison setting. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I understand that. I understand it because it's our culture. But for me, my culture as a Muslim, I'm going to the mosque. I'm praying 5 times a day.
Did you convert into Islam when you?
Yes, when I was in prison. It's the greatest decision I ever made in my life. Imam Zachariah Gusmala, may Allah have mercy upon him in the grave. He was one of the individuals, Tommy Davis, who was Talib. He just got a reversal. Wali Siddiq, and a few other brothers, man. Matter of fact, BJ Benny Hardy, he's down in Atlanta. He was an example for me. And, there's a couple of other people that were examples for me because I looked at them as being my peers. And I said, if they can change their life and become better human beings, let me investigate what they're doing. Let me read the things that they were reading. And then I seen that Islam itself was such a beautiful way of life. I said, man, why am I not doing this? I said, oh, that's a no-brainer. And then when I said, La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his slave and messenger. When I made that decision, I'm telling you, we was outside in D Block. D Block is where the riot started. And when I said La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, I was looking at bullet holes from the riot on the wall. I was looking at the bullet holes, literally as I was saying it. And it was pouring down raining. And when I said that, when I repeated that, it stopped raining, the sun came out, and brothers was like, Jihad, boy, it's on, ain't it? I'm like, yeah, alhamdulillah, let's get to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it was the best thing for me because now I have a sense of direction. Right. Before I didn't have a sense of direction. And then I began to read the history books about some of the greatest human beings on the face of this earth that were Muslims. And it's not something that individuals can say, well, there's the sayings where he tooting his butt to the moon and touching the skies and all of that silly stuff. But to have a connection with the Creator and then know that there were, like Mansa Musa, the richest man on the face of the earth, he was a Muslim. And he went through Europe specifically giving millions and millions of dollars in gold to fund Europe.
I want to ask you this question. Sorry to cut you off, but what is your thought on people that have used this as a trend? There's people actually that do go to prison and they have made it as a trend. When you go to prison, you convert into Islam, and they're so cool online with that. And
it's beautiful for me. You know why? It's beautiful. Why? Because they're being exposed to the truth. There's a time when we can say, oh man, that's a trend, it's a fad, they shouldn't be doing it. No. They have a choice. Right. To be a part of something good or be a part of something bad. They chose while they were there to be a part of something good. Now when they come home, they have the opportunity to know what's good and what's bad. So if they decide to go and do something else, you've already had the opportunity. You've been exposed to some goodness. So why would you go back and choose bad? So whatever happens to you in this life, you chose it consciously because you've been exposed to some good people. Not only good people that are Muslims, but good people that are Christians. Because as a Muslim, Islam teaches us to respect all and every religion. We believe in the 5 books. We believe in the Bible, the Torah, the Psalms. We believe in those books and the things that those books are saying. It's just a different way of life.
Different way.
You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, we're all striving for the same thing. We're striving for the same thing. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit fornication. Alcohol. We're striving for the same thing. So I respect him. I respect his spirit. I respect the preachers that are living rightly, that don't have a ATM machine in their spot.
There's
you know
some that do.
Because it's one of them situations. Whereas
I heard some got cash up
listen,
and
they got
credit
cash up and
cards
everything.
now.
They do, and I'm a Christian. I don't blame pastors who
I don't blame
who collect
them.
tithes the way they collect
I don't
it.
blame them,
But
but-
I mean, ultimately, right? And because I want to hit on something that you said about the trend, because I've seen it with Christianity too. Folks come to prison. Maybe they got a rape case. Maybe they got an assault against a child or a woman. I want to join. Muslims ain't gonna let me in, or I can be ganging with. I mean, be Christian. I see it too, right? But ultimately, I say the same thing that he says. As long, I mean, who am I? Number one, to judge.
To judge those individuals and not
blessings
allow
and peace
them
be
to
upon him. But Jesus didn't judge folks. Even when we believe when he was on the cross, he also had forgiven the criminal that was next to him, right, and still allow him in. So I say to just say, none of us is in a position to judge. So I say, as long as you come into our setting, our church, and you trying to do the right thing, and which is honor God and get yourself better, have at it. And because ultimately, who knows who's going to flick that switch? They may come in there with an ulterior motive. I have ulterior motive, right? When I, not with my Christianity, but when I decided to do the right thing, it's because I wanted a better life. That's a motive.
That's a motive.
Right? And so this person may be coming here because they want to escape violence or they want a place of safety or whatever the case may be. Ulterior motive, but who knows, God, Allah, or whatever, who knows when that switch could be flipped. So who am I to say I can't let you into this place because of certain things?
Yeah,
But
why not?
ultimately-
Right to it.
Yeah.
Why not?
And
that's
but we all
true.
need that because humanity is made up of that, right?
That's right. That's
we
right.
oftentimes forget that third aspect of it. We deal with the mind and the soul. We even deal with the body. Forget the spirit. And so we need to be back connected because again, that's the foundation of love, of life. It's that connectedness to our higher creator, which takes a lot of humility. You have to be humble,
Man, who are we, man?
loving,
Who are we?
and then reflect that. Right.
Yeah.
And so I encourage everybody to do it. I don't care.
I wanna ask you guys this because I mean you mentioned there's no we're nobody to judge anybody else, but like do you think if you have some type of relationship with that person you're able to at least critique them, tell them exactly this
Of course.
this is your mistake and I feel like you should look this direction or
Of
else
course.
I'm never gonna give you any advice again.
There's a certain amount of respect that people should have for one another. But as my friend, as my partner, my homeboy, whoever it is, if he decides to become a Muslim, for me, if he's interested in Islam, I'll always tell them, do some studying first. Come hang out with the brothers. Do your own studying so that you can say to yourself, this is for me or this is not for me. There's not going to be no ill feelings or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to ostracize you.
Right.
You just make the conscious choice that that's not what you want to do or that's not where you want to be. But it's not up to us as human beings to say that he's wrong for not being a part of us. No, this is a volunteer thing. You can volunteer, you can submit yourself, you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Now, granted, in a prison setting, I ain't gonna sugarcoat nothing, but in a prison setting, you have people that were in Clinton, that was a blood, and they go to Attica and they Muslim, and they leave Attica and go to Comstock and become a Niyata, and they leave Comstock and then they go to Kaksaki and become a rat hunter.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
They're
They're basically confused then. at that point.
They're
Searching
confused.
too,
They're
yeah.
confused. They're searching, but they getting in where they think that they can fit in.
Right.
Now, in that aspect, we make sure that we say, hold on. You was with the apes when you was in Clinton, wasn't you? No, that's a contrast. You can't
that's
come
it.
and be a Muslim and be an ape.
Right.
You can't be a 99 and come over here and be a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. That's it because of the belief system is wrong.
Right.
It's different. Nothing wrong with what you were doing, but you can't come over here and do that because we're over here with this. Right. Because what happens is that we have a vow to protect you now. So what you did in 2 or 3, 4 other prisons is going to follow you. And some of these brothers we have understandings and respect with and for. So now that you've done some things to these brothers and their people, you here with us, it's going to cause a conflict. And in prison, the conflict is violence.
Violence, and
immediately.
And if you do anything like beyond, just fighting someone, your time gets increased.
So we put ourselves in a position to protect one another. There's a vetting system that goes on. There was a time when people used to bring their paperwork to the yard and stuff like that, but that's no longer something that we use. We simply allow an individual to come in and say, hey, this is what you want to do. Let's do some studying first. Let's see if this is for you. And in the process of doing that, we also vet this person to find out where they from, what's their case, do they owe money? You know what I mean? Are they bringing harm to us? Because we peaceful over here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But and I'll also say we do a disservice with that word judge. Right. So even in Christianity, we're supposed to judge. We're not supposed to judge to condemn somebody, but you're supposed to judge or evaluate somebody, right? Jesus himself, blessing and peace be upon him, said, judge a tree so you know the fruit that it bears, right? And so I can't look at this tree and say, you tell me it's an apple tree and you're producing oranges. That's not right, brother. If you're an apple tree, you need to be producing apples, not oranges. You can't tell me that, you apricot, but you are, passing out watermelons. That don't add up.
No, I don't.
So my evaluation of you, I have a right as a brother to say, you might want to, straighten it up, brother, because just like what he said, I have also become protective of my own circle, my own being, on top of the community that I'm involved with as well, right? And so you can't bring things into this that's going to jeopardize that or mess that up. Then I have every right to say, you might want to, cut that branch right there because it's not producing apples, So it's nothing wrong with that. What I can't do is sit in the judgment seat, tell God, scoot on over, God, let me judge this person because you going to hell. That's judging to condemn. Right. So there's a difference. You're supposed to be evaluating folks because, again, I pick who my friends are nowadays. Before I didn't do that. When I was young, I let other people decide if they're gonna let me be their friend.
That's right.
And then I had to live up to responsibility what they want. Now it's not like that. I choose who my friend is, and I choose how that relationship is gonna go.
I mean, because
right?
you understood where it took you. If,
yes.
In that point.
Yeah.
And speaking of violence, because I wanna talk about that. Nowadays, it's picking up a gun rather than putting guns down and hands up. And as I was speaking on the phone with you this morning, you mentioned how, you have increasingly spoken about, gun violence, on how it has been affecting our communities, especially, was it like last week or 2 weeks ago, this one young brother was shot and killed. And it was crazy because they could have solved that issue either with a dialogue or they could have at least just fought. Yep. And each person would have went home peacefully.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, what's your take on that? How can we solve gun violence within our community?
Well, one of the things I want to give a shout out to the CEO and president of the Community Health Center, Benwood, Dr. Levon Ansari and Dr. Kenyatta Davis. We have a thing with the Community Health Center with the behavior health, but we also have a resiliency center. The resiliency center that was created for 514 shooting at Tops. So when the Resiliency Center is created itself, it covers guns, anti-gun violence protocols and programs, and it covers, simply having the doors open for individuals to come in and address whatever violent issues that they may have. Because a lot of people don't even speak about families. They'll look at the victims, but they won't speak about the families of the person that may have been convicted for the violence. And because everybody is a victim. Everybody is a victim in that sense. The entire neighborhood. People look at the term terrorist because social media tells them what a terrorist is. But I was a terrorist at one time. And I terrorize certain people in the neighborhood. Terrorists can be anybody that terrorizes or put fear in a block, a neighborhood, a person, an animal, or a dog, a cat, or whatever it is. That's what a terrorist is. So there's a lot of terrorist activity going on in our cities. And unfortunately, it's being committed by young people because the lack of moral responsibility. And then, there's also the fact of the drugs that's involved. the ignorance of youth. He just said at the age of 25, scientists has proved that your brain doesn't begin to fully develop as an adult until you're 25. These kids are 12 and 13 years old. They have opportunities to more weaponry and drugs than we've ever had opportunities to. So how I feel about it is that it has to be us. Adults has to stand up and say, you know what? I know my nephew, he doing A, B, and C. I got to check him. I got to get to him and his friends. You know what I'm saying? I got to get, because it starts in the home. And most of these kids are coming from homes that ain't no home. All it is a shell structure of a home. But what's in the home is not enough to sustain them and stop them from doing things, stop them from doing the drugs, stop them from hanging out with individuals that are doing the most vilest, disgusting things in the neighborhood. And then you got to remember, these kids are on drugs. A lot of these kids are on heavy drugs. So they're not thinking about the ramifications of picking up a pistol. Their thought process is, now I'm seeing how many bodies I can get. You know, my man that I'm on social media with in South Dakota got 15 bodies. So I'm gonna go. I got to get 16. His crew in Chicago got 40 bodies. So my crew only got 20. So we got to get 40 by the weekend. So these are the comparisons and things that they have to compete with, instead of competing in the consistency of good behavior, because good and bad is going to exist, and the guns is going to exist, but we have to make people accountable. Right. Forget the fact that, the police officers that arrest people with guns and gun buyback programs. No, let's take it all the way to the top. How the guns getting here? You know what I'm saying? How they getting into our neighborhoods? Consistently getting into our neighborhoods. I'm 52. Mm-hmm. Guns been coming in our neighborhoods since the 90s. Late 80s, early 90s. When I was a kid, a young man, there was AK-47s with 100 round Tommy gun clips. We thought that was just the most phenomenal thing possible. Now they got switches and glixes and all that other stuff, handguns with triple banana clips, and they riding around with that.
It's crazy, man.
They're riding around doing that because they don't got nothing else to do. Yeah. So it's a combination of the lack of opportunities, the lack of more responsibilities, the lack of adults, the prevalence of drugs, the fact of the matter that they're closing down schools. There's no after school programs. The community centers are closing at an early time. So there's not many places for the kids to go and really do something. Do something with themselves or consistently. So it's a combination of a whole bunch of stuff. And if you got kids that ain't got nothing to do, what they gonna do? They gonna get in trouble. I just went and spoke at alternative school, St. Louis Street. They got over 100 and something students over there in alternative school. Mm-hmm. And that's just one school. When I was a kid, they had satellites where there were alternative school on Oak Street, which now unfortunately been turned into an apartment building, but they had satellites. And you get kicked out of school, you fight, you go to alternative, you get back in school. Now these kids ain't even caring about going to school because they don't care about anything at home, homie. I talked to 15 of them kids, and all 15 of them kids is just like, we ain't got nowhere to go. It's 15 kids I'm talking to in a room, and they looking like, hey, we ain't got nowhere to go.
And they're young kids too.
And they're young. They're 15, 16, 17. They have nowhere to go.
Yeah, but
they don't have no dreams, no goals, no aspirations. They don't care about living.
That is the key. And that's the part that I was going to say, Jihad, is that some of the things that we're talking about is just Band-Aids for a larger problem.
Right.
Right? And so when you don't have hope, and why I can say this, because I was that kid in 1995 who didn't have no hope. I didn't see myself leaving out the hood. I wanted to make as much money as I can that day selling drugs. And I want to go have fun, get some girls, and buy the latest pair of sneakers.
That was the extent of my thoughts.
And so guess what? Because I didn't have hope, hope says that you're thinking about something beyond yourself and beyond this time. Right? You're thinking about future. And so some folks in our community is not thinking about hope future. So we got to get at the core of that. And again, it starts with a plethora of things. You got to build a person's self-esteem. You got to deal with your trauma. Some of these kids dealing with trauma, they're living, walking monuments of trauma. They've been in a fight or flight mode since birth, all their life. That takes a toll on you.
Yes.
That takes a toll on you even in your body, like boxers, people who use fight or flight mechanisms all the time. They can't even do that but so long before it wears out. Hormones inside your body. And if a person is living like that, even if it's just mentally, constantly on go, it's going to be a problem. So we have to deal with that, address a person's hope, make sure they feel good about themselves, think about the future. But also, we need relationship back in our community, right? I just got a call. I had a friend, matter of fact, because of Jihad, I was able to connect a person from my family and get him a job, right? So he wasn't necessarily doing the right thing. She came back and told me. So guess what? My relationship, I got to get in his butt now. And I'm not talking, literal that I'm getting, but we got to have this conversation because he got to know that he's also connected. You're not on that island that I talked about earlier, right? And so we have to have relationship. Relationship gives responsibility. So now that I've met you and know you, brother, when I see you or hear anything about you, I'm going to make sure that I acknowledge that, and I'm going to protect that. I'm going to be conscious of the type of energy I bring in your space because I know you, because I have this relationship now. And so if we get to that, right, all of us has a responsibility. When we leave outside of this studio right now, how many of us is going to give the head nod to the guy standing in the corner, or going to give him the evil screw or eye, right? How many of us is going to make that type of responsibility? Because I'll tell you this right now, it is a lot harder for me to go steal a car in his driveway because I know him. I got a relationship with him. Why would I want to do harm to him?
Right.
So we're missing the element of relationship in our community. And I'll tell you this, when you go to prison, I can't tell you, I got some best friends now who, had it not been for prison, we would be an eternal enemy for whatever situation the hood has caused. Now these are my brothers now. We built that relationship. So a lot of us need to get back to doing all the different things, provide opportunities, give hope, raise self-esteem, love, respect, lead with respect, right? But also build relationship. And that's what we need in our
I like how you brought up relationships because, as you can see, the reason why a lot of people tend to fight nowadays in clubs and shoot up the clubs is because they're also onto themselves. Yeah. So you walk in a club, you see a bunch of people just standing in one place, looking all tough, not wanting to interact with each other, get to know each other. Yeah. And then it ends up in a bad night because now you have this one crew that you just want to impress. And you forget that other person can also be your brother or your sister.
There you go.
All the time. It could save a lot of lives too.
I've seen it over and over and over again. And again, I went to prison and learned that. And lastly, I'll say, because we talked about the Bible earlier, we are type of beings that's supposed to be in community with each other. The Bible tells me that God looked on Adam, and said, it's not good that man should be alone. Right? Now, obviously, he gave him a wife and started a family, but that to me symbolizes we're supposed to be in community or commune with others. And so when you don't have that relationship, we don't have that community, it's a lot easier for me to be destructive towards you, hate towards you, or be violent towards you because I don't have that community, that relationship.
There was a young lady, didn't know her, she was driving a truck. She works for the Department of Sanitation. And it was at the stoplight, and she was turning a corner. And I reached out in the car and I said, "You doing good? You looking good, girl, with that makeup on." And she just lit up like a Christmas tree. She hit the gas, on the joint, like that, right? Cool. And I see her about a week later. She said, "Excuse me." I said, "Well, how you doing?" She was like, "I'm doing all right." And I said, "Well, who are you?" She was like, "You made my day." I said, "Okay, what did I do?" And she was like, "You gave me the compliment. And I'm the truck driver. I work for the Department of Sanitation." I said, "Oh, the other day, Kensington, Edgar." She was like, "Yeah, that was me. Thank you," because I was going through it. Wow. And I said to myself, "You're welcome." But I said to myself, that's easy. Yeah. That's easy. You don't know what people are going through in their life.
What if we did more of that? Yeah.
And what if you opened up the door for somebody and said, "No, you go ahead"? What if you got back to helping people with their groceries to their car instead of helping with the groceries and keeping it moving?
Yeah.
What if you got back and you see something in the road and you pull over and got out the car and put that to the side because, one, it can mess your car and your tires up, but it can mess somebody else's up too. What if we get back to that?
Yeah.
And people look at that and be like, "Man, what you talking about?" No, neighborly needs.
Yeah, that could happen.
Neighborly needs, neighborly duties. There's a celebration that we have August 9th. Masjid Newman is the 30th year is called Putting the Neighbor Back in the Hood. And it's going to be a celebration. We're going to have a march from Glenwood and Fillmore all the way down to Humboldt Park. We're going to have the stage where there's going to be music, African music. It's going to be drums, bongos. There's going to be a DJ there. They're going to have bounce houses, and it's going to be 15 to 20 tables of information booths along with food giveaways. There's going to be awards for the gardens throughout the city of Buffalo for individuals that has done great things in the city of Buffalo. The police department is going to be there. Sheriff's department is going to be there. They're bringing the horses. Firefighters will be bringing the hoses. You know what I mean? For the kids. And it's going to be a great celebration. But we're putting the neighbor back in the hood.
Like that.
Putting the neighbor back in the hood, right there from Glenwood and Fillmore,
The key word
all the way
is
down to
neighbor.
Humboldt Park.
I
Putting
love
the
that, yeah.
neighbor
Yeah,
back
key
in
word.
the hood. And Imam Fazri Ansari and Masjid Newman has been doing this for the last 29 years. And it's a beautiful situation because we have brothers coming from the west side, North Buffalo, South Buffalo, all 4 sections of the city of Buffalo coming to participate in this particular march. There's going to be a few politicians there. Of course, they're going to come and make their presence known, but putting the neighbor back in the hood, which is something that needs to be done because once again, because I live in North Buffalo and you live in South Buffalo, don't mean that you're not my neighbor. Because I'm going to meet you at Sam's Club eventually, and I got to open the door for you. Or you might get stuck on the road. I might have to get out the car and give you a jump or help you with your tires. That's neighborly.
Yeah, we need that more in our community. And my last 2 questions to you guys, because we actually
Over
close to
time,
the end. My last 2 questions is basically like, what programs do you guys have that are either have at the moment or that are coming up in order to help the youth, see a better future? Because your stories are very much impactful. And when you speak about your stories, is that you've been through it and you understand the consequences and how it feels being in jail for that long, and you see like that's not something good to even go through. So like what programs do you guys have in place, and also what message do you also have for the youth in order for them to actually start planning a better future rather than being able to follow these wrong crowds and end up, 6 minutes becoming 20 years in jail?
Well, what we do every single day is our programs that we have for the youth. Again, I'm a care coordinator at the Community Health Center in Billwood. So not only do I go out, recruit, and bring people in and make them patients or clients, but I make sure that I assess them to see what their needs are. And there are a lot of young people that has never been to the dentist. They've never been to the dentist. So I have to make sure that they come in and get dentist appointments. They need a primary doctor because they never had physicals. They don't know anything about a physical. So I make sure that they come in, I register them, put them in the system. They go to the dentist, they get physicals, and then if they want to take a violence program or a drug program, we make sure that we get them that. Find out if they need housing. Some kids need housing. Put them in foster care if they're young enough. And if they're adults, we do the best that we can to place them in positions to get their own housing. For me personally, I have a reentry program that's ran through the Community Health Center. The reentry program is for those that come home from prison, that are on probation, that are on parole from state and or feds, put them in a position to be able to have a better transition back into society. So doing that allows me to be able to go to court, to be a part of the UCAN program, which is a mentorship from Judge Suzanne Egan to mentor young people and put them in a position to go to high school, to get back in school, or to get a Mayor Summer Youth job, or be invited to, like I met you at the Youth Summit. Tommy Champion invited me to speak at the Youth Summit. I had a lot more to say. I didn't like the fact that they gave me this little bit of time because I can talk, but I needed some more time.
Yes,
so
sir.
those things are what we do on a
Right.
continuous basis. I get calls all the time. Hey, I need you to mentor my kid. I need you to do so on and so forth. So that's what I do every single day, hands down.
Yep, and I'm the same. So I do like a lot of mentor stuff in every event. So I technically mainly do a lot of work in Rochester, also Syracuse. I'm trying to be present here, especially since I'm from here. So trying to do things, but I always invite everybody to come be involved in the advocacy work that I'm doing.
Right.
In order to really make powerful change in our communities, we also got to attack policies and laws that's in line. So I'm big on addressing some of these policies and laws from the root cause and getting them changed.
Right.
And so we need voices. We need the youth voice. I can't tell you how many lawmakers pay attention when the youth come up or come and get involved in conversation, because they know there's something special about the youth. They know that they're going to be the next leaders. So it's very much, I invite everybody to come get involved and go to Albany. We provide transportation, lunch, everything to have people come be a part of the democratic system, because politics, whether we like them or choose not to be involved, it impacts all of us, our lives.
Every last one of
There's policy in place right now that's continuing poverty and also keeping people in prison, right? So we talked about some of the things that's going on. He alluded to it earlier about guns and flooding in our communities. Do not be naive and don't think that there's a bigger plan behind us. There's some folks that's banking that more black and brown folks will end up in prison so they can continue to get paid off of them and their family can keep going on vacations to Walt Disney World every summer. And so I definitely invite everybody to come be involved with that. But I'll say this lastly, and it's a short story. I read this powerful book because we don't often talk about this other thing that's impacting all of us. You talk about social media, you talk about how we interact with each other, you talk about relationship. There's something impacting all of us because in us naturally is not how we're supposed to be acting. I read a book by Dr. Joy DeGruy. I got a chance to meet her in Rochester about a month and a half ago. She wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Encourage everybody to read this. There's a certain amount of colonialism experience that we all had, especially going through slavery, that has been embedded in us and it's in our genes. Science also says that things that moms experience while they're alive, they can transfer those things down to their kids and to their genetics and kind of like rewire and hardwire folks differently than what he's supposed to be. Why am I saying that? In her book, she said that she was watching out the window and her son was walking down the street. And the young man, as he walked down the street, another young group of guys came walking past him, and they had the screw face on and said, you know, what you looking at type of thing, right? And it was baffling to her that the kids had that exchange because when she went over to Africa, she saw that the tribal warriors over there would greet each other. I cannot say it in a native tongue that she did, but they greeted each other in their native language, and it was, how are the women and children doing? And so the other warrior, when he sees them, would say, the women and children are fine. That was symbolized to the other warrior that there's no war in the land, there's peace, there's food, there's safety, all these great things, right? So contrast that with what you're looking at and as opposed to how the children are doing. She says that the colonialism coming out of slavery, that kind of eradicated all of that from us. We have a different mind state now because of what we experienced, right? We're supposed to be greeting each other and concerned about what's going on in your backyard, and you're supposed to do the same for me. So we have to get away from this mentality of what you're looking at to how are you doing. I'll tell you this right now, our women and children are not okay, right? They don't have leadership. A lot of men ain't doing what they're supposed to do, and then we're on top of it, killing ourselves faster than the white man is killing us now.
That's right.
Yeah,
And so
our-
it's
our
that
life
post-traumatic
expectancy is very low.
slave syndrome, that
Post-traumatic
colonialism.
syndrome.
So we have to get out of that and we have to get back to who we're supposed to be, which is having a sense of spirituality,
That's right.
having a relationship,
That's right.
right, and loving ourselves. That's who we are at our core essence. So those are some of the things that we need to get back to, go back and reclaim that, and then put that into our lives now. Instead of what you're looking at, to how you doing, how are the family, how's the people in your community doing?
Amen.
And so that's what we're leading with. And that's what I try to lead with now.
You can contact me at lscott@chcb.net, and also, of course, the Instagram, Lamar Jihad Siddiq, and you can find out all the things that I'm doing with Millennial Hijra, which is the reentry program, millennialhijra.net. So again, lscott@chcb.net. And find out everything that we got going on. And you can communicate with me, contact me, reach out if you need mentorships, if you need me to come and speak to any of the youth, if you need any medical assistance, any counseling and behavioral health. The CHCB, no matter what you hear, is one of the best health facilities in Western New York. There's one on Benwood, there's one Cheektowaga, Lockport, Niagara Falls. And also we have the Resiliency Center for 514 shooting for individuals to come get counseling for that, and or they can come and get referrals to wherever the things they need pertaining to having violence affected them. So it's a lot going on.
Yeah,
We appreciate you. I just wanted to say thank you, Thomas, for coming, and thank you for finding myself and Thomas interesting enough to have on your show. It's a blessing to be here, and we need more individuals like yourself and to come through to make sure that their voices is heard, and so that we can start winning, man. Because it's a great situation for us to all be together, unified. We're stronger together than we are disunified.
Yeah, most definitely. It's an honor having you guys on the show as well, And plus, it was last minute for you.
Yeah.
And just look at it. I mean, the conversation was amazing. But yeah, man, here you guys go, man. This was an amazing conversation. Like I always tell you guys, I'm going to continue to bring amazing guests. So if you did enjoy this, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And I'm going to also put in the description below all the information that you need in order to contact them and just keep in touch. But other than that, thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in. This is East Event Child Podcast, and peace.
Peace.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Great job, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely proud of you, brother. I mean, next
you.
generation.
Yes, sir.
Proud of you for what you're doing too, man. It's inspirational and inspiring. You know, the young generation or next generation.